Hello, everyone. Welcome to webinar number 2 of this series. We are busting AT myths. We're very excited to be here with you tonight. If you joined us for the first one in this series, you already know this idea that we're going kind of out of order in the myths, and that's really okay. Tonight, we're going to do in this second webinar, we're going to focus on myths related to deploying assistive technology devices and services. So that is our plan for today. If you would like the slides, and why wouldn't you like the slides? I will put the link in the chat for people with us here today. You can also scan the QR code, or you can just follow the bit.ly, and it will take you to the slides. The slides do have some resources in them. I think some of the slides in some of the pictures will link you out to websites and other resources that might be there. So that might be something you're interested in looking at later, tomorrow, something like that as you go forward. Who are we? We are hosting this webinar series. So we are, and at this point, I said to me as we were coming in, it's just me. Naomi's not here with us today. I am, I guess, the Richard West Assistive Technology Advocacy Center. Here I am, the whole center. I'm the director of the center, and we are hosting this webinar series. I'm excited that Mia has joined us today. Mia, I don't have an intro slide for you. I'm so sorry. So your intro with you and your squirrel there just has to be in person right now. So welcome.
Everyone, my
Love
name
it.
is Mia Lodato, and I am the co-director and senior technical assistant specialist for CITES, the Center on Inclusive Technology and Education Systems. I'm wearing my Assistive Technology is my jam shirt tonight,
Love it.
and this is my buddy Squirrel, because that's what we're going to be doing tonight.
Because that's what we're doing. I'm doing Christmas backgrounds. You're doing squirrels. I don't know. This is what it's going to be. There's something about running something at 7 o'clock at night where you just roll the dice and you're going to get what you get. Here we go. And I think it's going to be fine. That squirrel's just slightly creepy as it hangs around the edge of the screen there. And I love everything about it.
It's
Before we,
nuts about AT, Mike.
he's nuts about AT. Thanks for coming, everybody. Good night. Good night.
Try the veal.
What am I going to do with that? Just some quick announcements before we jump into the myths that we'll talk about tonight. If you've come to our webinars before, you know Naomi and I like to dump a bunch of stuff on you that we're doing. We do a lot of different things to our center, and we obviously would love to have people join us. The thing that might be most interesting to all of you is the rest of this series. So like I had said before, this is a 5-part series. This is part 2 tonight. We will resume this series after the holiday break. So once we come back from the new year, we'll give you a chance to kind of settle in to your new year, and then we'll start again on the 7th, and then we'll do it every couple of weeks, and we'll finish up this series. All this information lives at our website. So if you go to our website, which is at4nj.org, and then search for our webinars page, and then it'll take you to the links to sign up for everything. If you signed up for tonight, that does not connect you to all the others. They are separate registrations, just as a heads up. Because we've had that in the past where someone's like, well, I signed up. Why didn't I get all the links? Well, we use different ones to track it and stuff like that. So there's probably a better way to do that, but that's the way we're going to do it. We do run a bunch of other webinars, and these are, even if you're joining us from outside of New Jersey, I want to say to you, all of these things are available to anyone. So if these are things that interest you, you're welcome to join us. We would love to have you. We have some upcoming webinars. Again, nothing's happening again until after the new year, so you're good. This might really be our last thing we do before the end of the year. Creating accessible materials, implementing AI as AT for students with dyslexia, and then AT supports for note-taking. Those will move us through the spring. Again, all that information is up on our website. Oh, I lied. There is one more webinar. Before the end of the year, we do a tech spotlight series. If you noticed the slide before, a lot of those webinars are about kind of big, broad topics where we talk about a lot of different resources and services. The Tech Spotlight series is focused on a specific tool. Typically, those webinars are led by a manufacturer's representative or a vendor, just to kind of put you in that frame of mind. And they come and they do half-hour webinars to give us a little understanding, a deeper understanding about the tools that they represent. And so on the 17th, which would Be next week. We have SafeWave, vibration at your wrist, connected to the world. Come on. How do you not go to something like that? I'll see you all there because that sounds great. So that's our tech spotlight. Two more things. Our YouTube channel where all these things end up living. So if you miss something we do, visit our YouTube channel, search us on YouTube, ATAC NJ. Everything is recorded. Everything shows up there. It usually shows up the same day. Today's will not. It will show up tomorrow. But same idea. All right, everybody who's not from New Jersey, look away for a second. Everybody who's here from New Jersey, good news. We have purchased, yeah, I don't want that squirrel sneaking in on this. We have purchased a subscription to the ATIA Learning Center, which means that if you live or work in New Jersey, you can sign up through our website link and get a code that you can visit the ATIA Learning Center and watch any recorded webinar they have for free. Those webinars are typically about 45 or 50 bucks a piece, give or take. And we have purchased this subscription so anybody from New Jersey can watch anything they want. So if you want to dig deeper into a certain topic, if you want to share that with people you work with, people in the community, it is literally whoever you want to share this with. As long as they're from New Jersey, that's fine. You can get in there and you have free access for the whole year. Interesting little note, I'm going to give you a little but right here because you're going to go to the Learning Center and you're going to see the sign up for the conference that happens in January. And there is a virtual component to that conference. This does not cover that. So if you sign up for that, it's not going to be free. It's going to be a few $100. So just know that because we usually get these calls about this time of year where someone says, I'm trying to sign up and it won't let the code go through. And then we dig a little deeper and we realize they're trying to sign up for the conference. So check that out. Finally, you wouldn't know it from the first handful of slides, but this will be a conversation. We have some things we will chat about, but we would love to hear from all of you. So however you feel comfortable chatting with us, if you want to put it in the chat, I have it open and I can see it. If you want to turn your mic on and your camera on, we would welcome that. Mia and I would love for this to be a conversation.
Otherwise, it's just going to be the two of us speaking.
Just the two of us speaking.
Nobody
and you know
wants
what?
that.
That only is good for so long, and then that's enough of that, right? The whole idea of what started this was this myths and facts document that the U.S. Department of Ed put out earlier this year, in January of this year, which finally gave us an opportunity to kind of bring to light some of these myths that a lot of us hear all the time. And it brings us to one document that not only highlights these things that are myths, but gives us some concrete examples of what makes these things facts and some resources that we can use to support. It's a great document. If you haven't downloaded it yet to explore it, here is the link. I'll put it in the chat. There's the whole PDF of the document. You can print it out and highlight it and put sticky notes in it or whatever it is you do. Mine is all of those things right now. So definitely check those out. Like I said, tonight is the second chunk. We're going to talk about common myths and facts about deploying AT devices and services. Mia, something to add before we jump in?
Yes, it's amazing that you just knew that. Because did you know that the myths and facts AT devices and services are also in Espanol?
I did know.
Isn't it? They are in Espanol.
Yeah, the whole
they have
document.
A letter.
Yeah.
The letter, at the very least, the letter, dear colleague letter is in Espanol.
Yeah, I
believe the myths and facts, yes, is in Espanol also. That's Spanish for you non-Spanish speaking people.
Oh, that's
pretty awesome.
All right, this is going great, everybody. Here we go. You ready? We're going to dive in. There's a handful of myths. We'll talk about the myth. We'll explain the fact that's behind that, and then we'll show some examples. Again, if some of these things resonate with you, the things you've experienced or things that you've talked about with colleagues or families or individuals themselves, we would love to hear it. Please, again, share it. The floor is always yours. It continues to be yours. So here's the first myth in this section. Buying AT devices takes a long time and won't give timely service to the child as required. As we know in IDEA, there is a comment there about timely manner. That phrase, timely manner, and in fact, the fact is IDEA requires that as soon as possible, following the development of the IEP, Special ed and related services are made available to the child in accordance with that child's IEP. This includes AT devices that are needed as part of their service. I guess ultimately this comes down to timely and what that means. I think that's always an interesting conversation because for me, that word timely for some teams resonates with them or trips them up the same way the word consideration trips people up. It's like, what does that really mean to us? And I think what's interesting about this, and my first thought when I talk to teams about this is you will deliver AT devices and services in a timely manner if you have worked on your service and your processes. Up on the slide right now are the indicator areas from the group called Quiet, Quality Indicators for AT Services. If you're not familiar with these, this is the areas on the left-hand side in the blue box there that talks about the areas of focus where we should be exploring ways to deliver better services. And if you look at the top five there, the top five will take you through this whole process. If your team has considered these things and talked about these things and developed processes about this, you start at consideration, you go to assessment, you add the AT into the IEP, you implement that AT, and then you evaluate whether it's been effective. If you do all those things, I feel pretty sure you're going to be delivering timely service. Uh-oh, link is broken. Let me find the link and figure out what link is. Is it this link right here? The link to the slide, to the videos, Laura? Yes? Okay, I will fix that. I don't know that I'll fix it right this second, but I will fix it though. I wonder why. That's odd. Um, all right, watch me make a note. Mia, what do you think about this? This idea of timely and your service delivery process.
I would have to agree with you regarding the quiet resources, right? If we are following those steps, we should be able to get timely resources in the hands of people. I will say, though, being in a different state of Florida, I don't think I shared that, that different districts handle it differently. And I'm sure in New Jersey, you guys have the same kind of situation there when we're looking at procurement. So if you're not working hand in hand with your IT department, which is assumed in these steps, but is not like, spelled out exactly, then we could have some issues.
Yeah, it's so true. And you're right. I think there's a bit of an assumption within all of these steps of the indicators that there is collaborative teamwork there, which I think is critical. I think that's kind of the overarching umbrella over all of this is what does your system look like? How are you making sure this happens? And with proper planning, you can achieve timely manner. You can achieve timely delivering of assistive tech services. Um, Sometimes I'll talk to a classroom team and they'll say, well, what does timely manner mean if we're going to deliver materials to one of our students? If I come in and say, you know what, the team has done some evaluation, we've checked into things, we've tried some things. There's been a determination that this student needs digital materials for everything in order to use text to speech to read them. Um, and when the team says, well, how does that relate to timely manner? What does that look like? And well, it looks like the student getting the digital materials the same day everybody else is asked to have those materials. That's to me, that's timely manner, right?
Right.
I'm going to sit down as a student and do that work. Everyone should be doing that work at the same time. So I think your process becomes key here. If you were here on the last webinar, you heard me talk a lot about process, and you're going to start to realize in this series, I love talking about process. I don't even like talking about tools as much as I like process because tools is I
Mm.
think what everybody wants to talk about. I think this is the part that starts to matter. Because if you don't have a process, or you can have all the tools in the world and you might not meet somebody's needs.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I'm wondering out there how many people are like completely on it right now, like of all the people that are in
Mhm.
the chat. I'm wondering how many people have processes for these and how many people are kind of struggling
I'm curious if
in
you
this
have a
area.
process, share. So
Laura does not have solid systems. Well, that makes your job that much harder than Laura, I'm
it
guessing.
does, right? Yeah, these are the parts where,
Ah.
I feel for you, Laura, because I've been in these situations where there are misunderstandings that if I just recommend a tool for someone, this is all going to be
Hmm.
fixed. And it's never that easy. There's not a lot of times nothing about that. It's about how are we making sure that we're doing all of these things, um, and bringing that to administrator becomes really critical. If you go to the Quiet website, which is quiet.org, quiat.org, they have a document on their website where it is a self assessment of where your school is at in each of these areas. My first step that I talk to teams is do the self assessment and then ask someone else in your school to do the self assessment and compare. And then ask another person to do it and compare again and start to get an idea of what is happening across your school. Yeah, Hollis
Yeah.
says, I keep getting changing messages on what the process should be. Yeah, plus admonishment when I step outside the unspoken boundaries. And Hollis, that's a great example of um, a lack of a coherent plan causing missteps. Here you are trying to make some change for a student and provide that support, but because there is no defined process, I would love it. Again, in your school, Collis, I would love to give that self-assessment to the person who told you you're stepping over your boundaries where you're supposed to, and then compare that with someone else in your school and see where that person's at in their understanding of what it is that you have and do.
Well, and what's the number one cause of frustration? Do you know what causes frustration? Unmet expectations, not knowing what the expectation is.
Yeah,
Right? So if like Hollis has no idea what the expectations of these people are, and vice versa, there's no expectation for what should happen with AT, what processes we're using, then it's going to cause a lot of frustration. We need to be on the same page about what is the expectation and how are we going to, right, communicate that across the board.
for sure. Yeah. Mickey mentions in the chat this idea about Mickey works at DVR in New Jersey, and it's the evaluation process part is limited for them. There is, and I do know this, there is only one vendor that provides AT evals and trainings. Um, and so, that is not something that, the evaluation piece doesn't fall to the counselors, obviously. It's falling to these professionals that go out and do this. But because of the system, that is a challenge. And then timely has a whole other meaning at that point. If you have only one vendor you can go to for evaluations and it takes some time to get them, uh, that becomes really difficult. Essa or Isa, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. If you would like to speak, throw your mic on.
Sure. So it's Issa.
Isa, hello.
Right. Yep. Hi. So I work in a very large district in Florida. And I'm here tonight because I'm going to be using the myths and facts in an event next week that we have for our ESC district staff. So any ideas I can get, I already have like a plan, but I'm here for that. But as far as our process goes, we have a really solid process for a lot of these, but we do fall apart at the implementation and the AT in transition. And we have for years, especially the AT in transition. And it takes a lot of collaboration. And the transition issue, I think, is that collaboration with other departments, with procurement, they can't, we would love to like gift students their devices on their way out because in the majority of cases they don't get reused because they're highly customized, they're typically on the older end, etc. So it kills us to know that it's, going to go sit in a closet or be, destroyed at some point. And we have struggled and struggled for years and years to come up with some kind of process to help students in transition other than just recommending they go get an eval out, at an outside resource.
Yeah, right. Let me ask you one question about your implementation phase. Why do you think that's where it all starts to fall apart?
Lack of manpower to follow through. So we have we have 7 AT professionals that work at the district level who are part of that assessment process. We've built a good school-based IEP team-based assessment process, but a lot of times they need the help of that AT person. And they're really good about the trial, determining what the best fit is, but then the student gets the device and it's really hard for the follow-up. The follow-up just doesn't happen unless a school reaches out, with specific questions and issues, but we end up being much more reactive once it gets to that point than proactive.
Yeah, I felt we were working up to a statement like we are reactive versus proactive. Yes, I feel your pain there. Yeah, and you hit on all of the big areas of why that implementation piece is that stumbling block, is that this requires buy-in from teams being participatory, everybody participating, finding ways to make sure the team members can do some of these things and perhaps not wait for an AT person the whole time. Can we have some other people pick up some of these responsibilities? Can we provide training and support for some of these school-based staff so that they can do some of these things?
Right.
Because
And
we can only do so much.
that exactly. And then, I don't mean to be negative Nancy, but I'm coming up
Go
with
ahead, do it
all
anyway.
the barriers. But being in a very large district, we have issues. Sorry. Hold on a second.
Lisa, and their team does an incredible job. An incredible job. They've got a lot of support, but I think what I heard her talking to Mike too was that, you can do the capacity building, right? But then with lots of turnover right now
Yeah.
and not having those teams staying or for a length of time that then they can even train the other people on their teams. That's a huge barrier right now and a challenge.
Yeah, it is really hard. You're right. And Mia knows, and Mia does this too. We talk about capacity building all the time, but the reality of it is there's only so much time. And so how do we do that? How do we make these things happen? How do we get admin? I'm scrolling through people's comments in the chat and talking about administration not buying into things. Hollis says it's hard to get admins to respond. Laura talks about expectations that are maybe not aligned with reality. The expectation in my district is for the SLP to be an expert in all things. But there's a lot of pressure with that, with both the tech part of that and the process part of it. And you're right. I mean, the field is broad. The knowledge base you have must be broad. And the reality is not a single one of us can know everything. There's just no way. There's just no way. So how do you do that? How do you as a school, as a team, figure out how we're going to do that? I'll even go one step further to Laura's statement, and it kind of filters through her statement a bit. These misconceptions of AT is only AAC. We have an AAC person, so we already have covered all of AT. And vice versa. We have an AT person. I'm an AT person. I am not an SLP. I am not an AAC person. I will not do that. I don't know how. I just don't. But if I was brought in as your AT specialist and then I turned around and said, well, guess what? I can't do that. You're going to need to bring someone else in. And they say, well, why? You're that person. No, there's two very different things there. And having people understand that these are part of the conversations. These are part of and really the indicator matrices do a really nice job of starting those discussions also. You start rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is we're not very good at this. 5 is what they call promising practices, and I like that. It's not you're amazing, it's promising. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Promising. Um, and it's really humbling at times for teams to look at this and say things. I just had a team do this a few weeks ago. Say, oh, I wish I could give us a 0 here. Like they can't even commit to a 1. That's how far they feel like they have to go. And a lot of times it's not the case. I think they do things, I think all of us, when you look at those at the matrices, you'll realize we do certain things really well, but there are parts where there are pockets of things we don't do well. Those become areas of focus. Um, just sharing them with an administrator might be enough to make them say, oh, wow, there's a lot to this. Right? We have to really start thinking about how to approach this as a school. You guys are nice and chatty. I love it. I think this is great. This one will probably be a little quicker. Myth 20. I know it's weird. We're going to say Myth 20, but that's where we're at. All AT devices must be approved by the IT department. That's got to be true. That's got to be true, right? No. The IEP team decides.
It might feel like it.
It might feel like it. I feel like
Let's
at times
talk about that.
an IT department might want you to think that there are times where they have to be the ones that control those things. But no, the IEP team determines what that student needs. And then that collaboration comes in with how do we make that happen? We all have a place in this process, including our including our IT teams, and maybe we have ed tech coaches, and maybe everyone is part of this process. How do we make sure there's an understanding? An IT person saying, well, we don't use that tool, and then turning around, well, that's really not a good answer, unfortunately. I feel like the answer to that would be when someone says that we don't use that tool, I feel like one of us could say to them, yet, because we're about to use that tool, because that's what's going to be appropriate for this student as we go forward. And so there are more conversations. That's where that administration buy-in comes in. Having them understand. I even hate to call the IT department them. I feel really bad that I just did that. But this idea of all of us working in the same direction, not working against each other, but working with each other towards that same goal, reminding the IT department sometimes that we are in this together and that we are working for the students.
And you know what, Mike?
What?
There's more. There's a website for that.
Tell me about it.
Would you like to hear about it?
I would love to hear about it.
It's called cites.cast.org.
That's about it. We could have put it in as a slide.
Shameless plug.
I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share
plug.
slides. I'm going to open your website so people can see it. Go ahead, talk about it. I'll get the slide. I'll get the web page going.
Okay. So, I, honestly, but all joking aside, how many people I know Issa has, just because I could have planted her here. I didn't even realize she's a friend of mine. I think it's great. That's so fantastic. I love that she's here. How many people here have seen or used the CITES website? If you guys can either put yes or no in the chat, thumbs up, thumbs down. Never. Oh, resounding never.
Great, this is good.
Well, that's kind of actually good. I used after the first webinar. Okay, Alice, cool. So mostly no's. Any yeses other than Mike and Issa? Oh, it doesn't look like it. Okay, so this is exciting because, and thank you for trying it, Hollis, after the first webinar. So Wyatt does incredible stuff with the indicators, right? Just fantastic stuff with the AT indicators. But as we're talking about IT now with the AT myths and facts, we kind of have to like go a little bit out of our comfort zone of being in our AT bubble. And we have to work across silos, right? And so CITES actually exists and has existed for 4 years. We're in the second round now. This is like, we're in the second next round of 4 years of this grant. And it exists solely to bust silos and to get ed tech, AT, and IT to work together, which is, it's always amazing to me, Mike, that this isn't happening.
Yeah.
Like it does happen in pockets. Like I
I
know
think
there's some
that's a good
places
way
in
to put it, right?
Florida,
It
right?
happens in pockets. And I'll bring it back to quiet for a second. One of my favorite words in quiet that I think really drives it home is consistently. They always talk
Mm,
about doing these things consistently, and I think sites is the same thing. We see pockets of it, but consistently do we see it? Not always.
right. And maybe not ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think it's like the percentage is smaller
Yeah.
than we would like. So as you see here, there's leadership, infrastructure, teaching, learning, and assessment, and more across the top. If you go to get started, you're going to see that there's these professionals, right? And what's the fourth one down after the framework? It is IT professionals. Now, those practices that you see across the top, those leadership, infrastructure, teaching, and learning, those are aligned to the National Ed Tech Plan. Now, for us AT people, the National Ed Tech Plan is kind of like, oh, that's cool. There is a National Ed Tech Plan. I didn't necessarily know that. Maybe I heard someone mention it, but for IT people, guys, girls, whomever, that's like their Bible. That's truly like what they align their things to, just like we go to quiet to look at the quiet indicators. So the idea here is that we're going to try to use some common language and you try to figure out how to combine what we both do. And be able to bust out of those silos and really get AT and ed tech and IT working together. So if you go to IT professionals, it has some really great advice in those little areas. And what's amazing is that if you tell an IT person, oh yeah, so CITES is about inclusive ed tech and it's aligned to the National Ed Tech Plan, they're probably gonna be like, really? Like, there's something that you know that I know, and there's a website that tries to, get it all together. And so here's the roles of IT in each of these areas. So you guys, you might just be in leadership right now, and you're literally trying to, I don't know, develop a strategic technology plan because your district doesn't have one, right? Well, here is the role of the IT professional in it right there. So by sharing ideas for how IT staff can support the interoperability. And if you click on develop a strategic technology plan, by the way, I would say this is why the squirrel is here, because this does not go down a rabbit hole, but it definitely goes down a squirrel hole.
It's
You
at
can
least
be
it's a squirrel hole at
squirrely.
best. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
squirrely about all this stuff. So over here are the actual practices. So the NETP, just to make it easy, lots of big words. The NETP does the what, right? It's the practices. And what the CITES framework comes in and does is shows you the how. And right here is actions, the how, that lead to that strategic technology implementation plan. So defining the shared ownership, defining AT, EdTech, and IT. Remember how we just talked a second ago about expectations? If your IT person doesn't have any expectations of what AT is, doesn't you guys don't have a shared definition about what AT is, that might like cause the frustration of like you go to ask for this. And yes, they don't necessarily approve it, but they might give you a lot of pushback if they have absolutely no idea what the expectation or the definition of AT is. And then we have create goals and benchmarks and communicate the plan. And so what's really cool about this is just like the quiet, there's, wait for it, surveys. for you to take, for your IT person to take, for you guys to come back together. It would be great to involve other people, but at the very least, it could be you and your IT person. And I know you can't force them to do it, but if you go to more on the top, if you go to more on the top under resources, or you can search it. You can just search the self-assessments. They're not called surveys, they're called self-assessments. And so here you find the leadership practices, and it gives you everything that you need to do. And it'll tell you where you should start based on what your answers are. And of course, the guidance is just like Mike was saying, you take it alone and then you convene as a team later on to see what your answers are, because you don't want to get in that weird situation where it's like, oh, well, I think this. And like, so whoever's the loudest voice in the room convinces the other person to vote a certain way, right? So yes, it's another rabbit hole or squirrel hole, as we'd like to point out there. There is a reason for the squirrel being there, but at least there are some resources where now you can like have those conversations possibly with your IT people and get some common ground. At least I'm going to put that out there as far as this myth is concerned.
I think that's the starting point, right? Common ground,
Right.
common understanding, a commonality of what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, and finding some of those threads that we can start to pull together or strand together a little bit and make people understand. One of the
Yeah,
best thing one of the best things about the update to the National EdTech Plan was this whole chunk that they've kind of highlighted this time about digital accessibility.
yeah.
That's huge because that gives us an in. Like, hey, how about that accessibility stuff, huh? And then we can start a conversation about this and how we do this at a school and a district level.
And it was a huge collaboration, right? Like this is the first time ever that the AT people at the federal government and the ed tech people had a collaboration.
Mhm.
So what's also exciting, Mike, and you guys are actually hearing this first. So this is honest to goodness, you guys are hearing it first outside of the CITES advisory board. We are getting ready to drop the first iteration of an alignment between the NETP, the new one, the sites framework. So with, AT, I don't know if you guys saw that, but AT is a huge part of the sites framework, and ISTE standards also. So now we're having a document where you can be like, oh, hey, look, in leadership, blah, blah, blah. And that's right here in the NETP. So let's talk about this and how we can get this to work, because that's the proof's in the pudding, like you said, Mike. But now instead of like having to just guess where it is, you can kind of, do a control F, right?
Yeah, and
A
figure it out,
control F
right?
in the
It's so
document,
true. It's
right?
so true, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I love it. Nothing worse than a control F, am I right? All right, here we go. I love it. I know. I'm looking at the time, everybody. I know you were supposed to be here till 7:45. We'll move through these relatively quick. I mean, it's 7:40, but it's a good conversation. It's okay. Um, the next myth, only staff who specialize in AT can deploy AT devices and services. No, you have representation across your team in order to make sure you can meet the unique needs of all the children you serve. That might include an AT specialist, but speaking as an AT specialist, here's my hot take of the day. You don't need me to consider AT. You can talk about and consider AT all the time. You can have conversations. You can go search out resources. You don't need to wait for me or Mia or Isa to come and join you. I mean, we'd love to. All three of us, I think we'd love to come join you, but you don't necessarily have to wait for us to come join you. I think there are things that people can do and ways that they can start the process or propel the process forward after they've met as a team. Thinking about it, and I won't go through this slide because it's what Mia was just talking about. The idea of breaking down silos and eliminating the expert and finding and celebrating the expertise in everybody we have. Think about that. Everybody on our team has some kind of expertise that can help move us forward. What is it? How do we find it? And how do we celebrate that as one of the ways we come to a solution? Mia, go ahead. What do you got on your slide here?
This is just direct links to the sites to the policy page where we have the AT myths and facts, the graphics that you guys can use. They're free and alt text to use with them. So if you want to use those, if you want to bring this back to your district, I know Isa mentioned that she's going to be using the myths and facts. We have the game that Mike's used. And then there was an AT guidance webinar, which was great because the questions that were asked in that, we actually heard back from OSAP. So there are the actual answers to that. So you might want to check that out. But it made me think, Mike, I know we only have 2 more minutes, but you were talking about capacity building. And one thing we have on the CITES website is those videos, the inclusive technology videos with the facilitator guides that are completely free and completely scripted and tell you everything that you need to use for a professional learning on the CITES framework, MTSS and AT, just inclusive technology. What is AT? Remember we were talking about those definitions, like what is AT, what is accessibility? So those are right there on the CITES website too, and we should be able to drop a link to that in the chat. I'll do that right now.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put those in too, so you have some resources. Try to give you as many resources as we can to help propel you forward. Here's another resource. I was working with a group in Michigan called Alt Shift, and we were doing a lot of assistive tech training, working with teams and developing teams. I share this document with you because I love it. It looks like, I know, it looks like a Girl Scout cookie order form, and that might be the beauty of it, that's why I like it so much. But what it is it's an AT skills inventory. Each of those colored bars represents an individual who may work with you, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist, a school psychologist, a consultant for deaf and hard of hearing, a consultant for blind, visually impaired students, a special ed teacher. Each of those colored lines, they went through. I wasn't part of the collection and doing of this. I just love sharing it. They went through and looked at all of the professional codes of conduct as to what these groups should be capable to do. And they've compiled it into one chart. So if you're looking for people that you work with who have specific knowledge about different areas, maybe seating and positioning, mounting equipment, understanding text to speech, whatever it might be, you can look across the color bars there and see who in your school may have that skill. It doesn't mean everybody will, but it gives you a place to start. If you wonder, no one in my school knows how to do this, maybe they do and you just don't know it yet. And so this is it also has a self-assessment where the people you work with, you can ask them to take the self-assessment and say, these are the things I feel comfortable helping with. You can compile that also. So kind of a cool document. I like it. All right. There are no resources available to LEAs who can provide technical assistance on AT devices and services. Oh, this can't be more wrong. There's all kinds of things, especially AT Act programs. Guess who's an AT Act program? We are. So if you're in our state, if you're in New Jersey, that is what we do. If you're from another state right now, don't worry. Your program does this too. We all do this. These are the things we do. We do demonstrations. You come to us and you don't know what you're looking for. We can help you figure it out. And we can show you things. You can try things. We will turn to you at the end and say, what do you think? Is this helping you or not? We'll help you make the decision. I like to point out, sometimes people tie this in their head to an evaluation. This is not an evaluation. I've been an evaluator. That's not what I am now. I am a demonstrator, which is much more fun. We will help you make a decision to go forward. We will not say to you, you need X, you need Y. That's not what we do, but we can certainly help you with the materials and the products to get a sense of what these things can do. So here, if you're in New Jersey, that's where we have it. Go to our website. All this is on there. Maybe you already know what you want. or you think you know what you want, and you want to try it before you buy it. We have device loan program. Every state has a device loan program. Reach out to them. The loan is free. We will ship it to you in state, and we will send you the label to ship it back to us. It costs you zero. We'll put it in your hand for weeks at a time so you can try it. And then finally, we do device reutilization. All your states do this also. Take equipment from the community, durable medical equipment, fix it, sterilize it, clean it, do all those fun things to it, and then put it back out into the community. I know that not all of your states will have the same setup, but there's the picture of our warehouse of the group we work with at Goodwill, and it's amazing to go into their workshop, to go into their warehouse and see all that stuff. So Hollis asks, is it free if the loan tech is damaged during the trial? Well, Hollis, now you've made a red flag about you, and so now I'm going to keep an eye on you. Are you going to break my stuff? We work it out with you. Obviously, if something gets broken, it gets broken. Those things happen. Come up with a good rationale and a good reason why it was broken. But yeah, it's okay. I think there's one of those things that was probably some kind of language in our loan agreement that says you have to do X, Y, and Z if it's broken, but we're recording, so I'm not going to say anything. But don't worry. Don't let that be the reason you don't use the loan center, Hollis, or anybody else. Hollis, are you in New Jersey? Keep an eye out for you when you come. Then break things, then go crazy. I don't know. And so, Hollis, seriously, I don't know what the California rule is. You would have to ask them. In ours, we're pretty loose. If something comes back and things have happened, whatever it happens, we recognize sometimes things break as people get them. Please don't tell the California group that I said you could break their stuff. Blame it on earthquake. All right, we've kept you a couple minutes. Hopefully, you've had some laughs as you've gone through. I pointed this out to the last group too. I wanted to just share it with all of you as well. ATIA did a webinar about the myths and facts, and it is free on their learning center, so you can just get it and watch it. It was a great conversation from a bunch of different panel members about how they're using the myths and facts. I was part of that panel. My part was fine. The other parts were really good. Paula from Georgia came in from their Department of Ed and had really great information about how their Department of Ed is working with the myths and facts. So really cool stuff. So definitely check that out. Hopefully this entices you to come back to join us again on January 7th. Mia will be here with us, right?
I think so.
I'm going to say
I'm
yes. We're going to
pretty
force her
sure,
into
yeah.
it. Mia will be
Yeah.
here with us. I'm just going to put it out there.
If
Naomi
everybody
will be
else
back.
shows up, I will be.
Yeah, that's right. Naomi will come back and join us. It'll be all of us. We'll be all here chatting. We're going to be talking about requirements under Part B of IDEA in that next time. Let's see. What is Barb asking? Do you all see these new alignments and information leading to more jobs for those interested in AT positions? Boy, that's such a great question, Barb. I would. I would like to think so, and I'll tell you why. Every year, we go to this international conference in AT. Every year. It's in Florida in January. I'll see Mia there in January. I'm always surprised at the amount of people, this is their first year at the conference or they're brand new to the field. And so I'll use that as my guide, and there are lots of new people every year. I think that a lot of people, while they might not have an AT position, they might have AT as other duties as assigned. To do that. And so maybe that's considered an AT position. But I think that's a really interesting question, Barb. I don't know. I would like to think so because it is more in your face now, assistive tech. It's surprisingly out there. And, Mia talks about the connection to the National Ed Tech Plan and things like that, where suddenly you're hearing these terms, assistive tech, in different contexts that we normally would. It's not just an AT person talking about it. I'm going to call them regular tech people talking about it. It's about the federal government sharing guidance on this topic and including those terms. And I think that's a good thing.
Inclusive tech, right? Or whatever we want to call it. I know you don't
whatever
like
we want to
inclusive
call
tech,
it, right?
but
Whatever we end up calling it. There's part of that trick that in education, because of IDEA, we still have to talk about these things as assistive tech because that's how they are defined
100%.
in
Yeah.
IDEA. But when we think about the broader aspects of it and the work that Mia's doing in CITES and the whole crew there, this idea of inclusive technology and the broader scope of it. When I introduce myself to people, I don't say I'm an AT specialist. I say I'm an inclusive technology specialist or an inclusive technology evangelist to yell about how great this stuff is. But I try to broaden that also, just to remind people that this is about everybody.
Preach it,
Good
Mike.
question, Barb. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I hope so. Well, everybody,
Preach it.
appreciate it. You stayed for extra minutes. Thank you so much. Mia, final thoughts.
Just thanking everybody out there for doing what they're doing. I mean, I can't thank you all enough for being boots on the ground, because we need you out there. Those are my final thoughts. Keep hanging on
Keep
and feel free
keep
to reach
on.
out. We have a community of practice at sites. We would love to have you guys as members of that. If you're not already, I'm gonna put it in the chat. So because we can't survive this without community, or as a couple of us like to say, hashtag commune AT. Hashtag commune AT.
That, yeah, find the group and tap into the group for sure. So Mia will drop that in the chat for everybody
Thank you,
there
Laura.
that's with us. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of the night. Have a happy holiday. Enjoy the time off. Don't do a lot of work, even though we probably will. Try not to do a lot of work. Mia, a pleasure as always.
You too, Mike.
See you
And
later.
Squirrel says bye.
Bye, squirrel.
Squirrel joke.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.